Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. Jack relented and instructed, "Tell them to bring it in then." Obeying his orders, the staff member turned around and went out. After that, Jack went out to check the goods. Before he left, he called Roxanne and Larry to come with him. Soon, the delivery truck drove into the compound, followed by 3 ambulances. Rex jumped down from the truck and greeted the 3 respectfully. Jack and Larry were meeting him for the first time, but it was obvious that Roxanne knew him. They both glanced at her, gesturing at her to speak for them. Roxanne got the message and she nodded politely at Rex, asking, "Mr. Tanner, this is?" Rex smiled and replied, "It's like this. Mr. Queen said that the children in the orphanage are very pitiful, and knowing that the Damaris family is here giving free consultations, he sent me over to deliver some supplies to the children. They are nothing valuable but rather some clothes, bedding and so on. We should have sent medical supplies, but Mr. Queen said that the Damaris family did not lack those, so he sent daily necessities instead." Jack nodded and asked the director of the orphanage to check the items. The Damaris family merely provided free medical consultation for the kids, and hence, had never taken these daily necessities into consideration. Roxanne looked at the 3 ambulances which followed behind the truck. "What about those ambulances at the back?" Rex explained, "These ambulances are all owned by the Queen family's private hospital. Mr. Queen said that the facilities here might be insufficient. If necessary, the children can be sent to the Queen family's hospital, and the Queen family will give them free treatment." The 3 nodded in unison, but their hearts were full of misgivings. Jack had no knowledge of Roxanne's personal life except for the fact that Alfred admired her deeply. Thus, Jonathan's actions naturally aroused suspicion about his relationship with Roxanne. Even though Larry was familiar with Roxanne's past, seeing the consideration Jonathan showed her, he could not help but wonder about their relationship too. Roxanne was unaware of the other 2's thoughtful looks. Even though she, too, felt that Jonathan's actions were rather strange, she smiled and thanked Rex. "That's very kind of Mr. Queen. Thank you, too, for making this trip. We thank all of you on behalf of the children." Rex waved his hand. "This is my duty." "It's no problem at all. I'll convey your thanks to Mr. Queen." Roxanne smiled. The director came over in a hurry. Seeing the truck full of supplies, he thanked Rex again. After the goods were deemed more than sufficient, Rex did not hang around but bid them goodbye and left. Roxanne and the others returned to their cubicle. The kids were crowded around Daniel, and some cheeky ones were even mimicking the way he was checking a patient's pulse. Noticing the adults coming back, the children returned to their positions. Roxanne looked at them apologetically. "Sorry for making you wait so long." The children shook their heads. "We only waited for a short while. You all work so hard, so you should take a break." Seeing the children behaving so well, Roxanne felt her heart melting. "What did the Queen family send?" Daniel asked out of curiosity, as they had not brought anything in. The 3 gave a brief explanation of what happened just now. Daniel nodded but was puzzled about why the Queen family showed such kindness to the children. His thoughts then turned to Roxanne, who had been recommended by the Queen family. Naturally, he put 2 and 2 together. Roxanne had no idea what the others were speculating about. Instead, she focused on doing her best to treat the children. The medical consultation only ended at night. By the time all the children in the orphanage had received their treatments, the doctors were utterly exhausted. Roxanne was also aching all over. However, the thought of those children getting better made her feel glad. Those who suffered from more serious conditions had been sent to the hospital as well. During the whole ordeal, she almost forgot about her original intention of being there. All she cared about was the children. The children were all lined up in the courtyard when the doctors walked out of the cubicles. Led by the director of the orphanage, the children bowed in unison and said, "Thank you, doctors." The group of doctors was taken aback. It was their first time doing a free medical consultation for orphans and also the first time they encountered such a situation. Thus they could not help but feel touched. Some of them even teared up. So did Roxanne. She clenched her fists with all her might to stop herself from crying. Roxanne then caressed the head of the girl standing right in front before reminding her, "Take good care of the younger ones. If you need any help, you may ask the director to get in touch with me." The girl nodded fervently. She seemed reluctant to let Roxanne go. Roxanne felt the same way about the children too. However, the thought of Archie and Benny waiting for her at home made her walk away. Jack gave a concluding speech and some reminders to the children before the medical consultation was officially over. Just as the doctors were making a move, Jack turned around and bowed solemnly at all of them. "This medical consultation has been a great success, and it's all thanks to each and every one of you. All of you are outstanding doctors, and I hope you will continue to do well in this industry. Goodbye, and I hope to see all of you again." It had been a pleasant cooperation. When everyone saw how humble he was, their impression of the Damaris family became even better and they smiled in response. Very soon all the doctors left and the Damaris family stayed on to clear up. Just as Roxanne was also about to leave, Jack called out to her, "Dr. Jarvis." Roxanne stopped and turned around. Since Larry was walking with her and he was quite close to Jack, he stopped as well. Jack smiled at Roxanne and apologized. After giving it some thought, "I feel that I must apologize to you." Roxanne frowned and looked confused. Based on what she could recall, it had been a lovely day working with Jack. She could not see why he had to apologize to her. "When I met you this morning, I had doubts about your medical skill. But after one whole day of interaction, you have changed my perception. You are indeed a very outstanding doctor in every aspect. I apologize to you for doubting your skill earlier on," said Jack seriously. Roxanne could not help but laugh. "It's fine. I don't mind. But I had no idea that you had doubts about me." In fact, she had even been praising the Damaris family in her mind for teaching their children so well. By the look of it, it was true. They were adept at hiding their true feelings too. Jack knew she was joking, but he merely smiled. After a while, Jack extended his hand toward Roxanne and said, "I hope we can work together in the future when the opportunity arises." Roxanne accepted his handshake and responded in all seriousness, "I look forward to it." There was still some work to be done, so Jack stayed back and bade the two of them farewell. Both Larry and Roxanne left the orphanage. Larry looked at her and smiled. "So, what do you think of the medical consultation today? Judging from Mr. Damaris' reaction, you should have attained your objective." It was only then realization dawned on Roxanne. She had placed all her focus on the children and forgot she was there to gain the support of the Damaris family. To her, the children were more important. As it turned out, she had helped the children and won Jack over at the same time. His behavior earlier on was proof enough of her success. Roxanne's eyes sparkled with excitement when she realized that. She turned and thanked Larry. "Thank you for helping me today, Larry." Larry raised his brows and said, "I don't recall helping you with anything at all." Roxanne then started to list the things he had helped her with. "In the morning, you must have told Mr. Damaris lots of good things about me. With you around, I was also not that nervous. Furthermore, when Dr. Hop made things difficult for me, you stood up for me." Seeing the exaggerated manner she was listing the ways he had helped her, Larry stopped her from counting and said, "I only told Mr. Damaris that you were a student of Professor Lambert and nothing else. As for the rest, that wasn't why Jack noticed your medical skill. There's no need to thank me. Roxanne pursed her lips and smiled. Larry's eyes darkened as he added meaningfully, if you want to thank someone, I think you should thank Mr. Queen. Roxanne was surprised when she heard that. However, she returned to her senses very quickly and explained, I have no idea what's up with those supplies either. Larry, please don't get the wrong idea. Unfortunately, Larry was still suspicious. If I recall correctly, the Queen family is the reason why you got to attend the medical consultation. On top of that, you also know the person who delivered the supplies. In other words, those supplies had been delivered specifically for Roxanne since the Queen family had sent someone she knew. Roxanne did not expect that to cause a misunderstanding and tried her best to clarify things. A Mr. Tanner from Queen Group is in charge of the herbs, and I knew him through the Research Institute. Perhaps Mr. Queen sent him to make things easier. There's nothing between the two of us. Larry studied her carefully. Seeing that nothing amiss with her behavior, he finally nodded and advised her, fine. I only want to remind you to consider Archie and Benny's feelings when you find a partner. Whoever you choose to be with will end up being their father. The boys have always been smart. Now that they are quite grown up, they are bound to have their own opinions. Roxanne nodded and said, I understand. At the mention of Archie and Benny, Roxanne could not help but remember the children at the orphanage. She started to feel depressed. Larry knew what was on her mind and patted her arm. We have done whatever we can. Let's leave the rest to fate. Those children are very pitiful indeed. I hope God has mercy on them and give them a fighting chance. Roxanne nodded in agreement, but she felt helpless. If only my medical skill were better, we might not have to send as many children to the hospital today. If only I had studied more about ancient medicine, then I may have been able to cure the children of more diseases. Don't think too much. It's getting late now. Both Archie and Benny are still waiting for you, consoled Larry. That was when Roxanne snapped out of her reverie, said goodbye to him and left. It was late at night by the time Roxanne arrived home. However, Archie and Benny were still awake. They opened their bedroom door carefully and stuck their heads out when they heard her coming up the stairs. Roxanne grew heavy-hearted as she was reminded of the kids at the orphanage when she saw the boys. Seeing her expression, the boys ran over to her and asked in concern, Mommy, what's wrong? Did something happen at the medical consultation today? Roxanne forced out a smile and led them back to the room. The boys flanked Roxanne and stared at her earnestly. Mommy, how are the children in the orphanage? Roxanne shook her head ruefully. They don't have parents. In fact, some of them were abandoned by their parents because they were sick. However, they are still very obedient and understanding. Images of those kids lying on the bed flashed through her mind, as well as those who were sent to the hospital because the doctors were helpless to treat them. After learning about their condition, the children hadn't forgotten to thank the doctors. Archie and Benny shared a look as their expressions grew stern. They asked carefully, are the children very ill? Roxanne inclined her head gently. Some were abandoned by their parents at the orphanage as their parents couldn't afford to save them. Mommy, can't you save them either? Benny gazed at her innocently. To him, Roxanne was the best doctor in the world and was capable of treating all kinds of illnesses. Roxanne patted his head in resignation and explained, Sorry, darling. I'm not as capable as you think. There are many diseases that I can't cure. Hearing that, Archie and Benny frowned in disappointment. They then offered Roxanne some comforting words, Never mind, Mommy. Someone else will come out with a way to save them. Children are blessed, so will surely grow up healthily. The kids at the orphanage were so sick that Roxanne couldn't be of help. Archie and Benny were disappointed, but they knew their mother was definitely more depressed. Then them at the thought. Hearing their comforting words, Roxanne pursed her lips and flashed a smile. That's what I think too. But they don't have parents. They must be sad, Benny said as he stared at Roxanne earnestly. I have mommy, but sometimes I still wish that daddy is with me. The children at the orphanage don't even have a mommy. I feel sorry for them. Roxanne bobbed her head as her lips curved into a stiff smile. Their new daddies and mommies will bring them home soon. Benny tilted his head and asked gingerly, do the people at the orphanage treat them well? Do they get to eat and sleep well? Knowing he was worried about the kids, Roxanne grinned and assured him, the people at the orphanage treat them well. This afternoon, Mr. Queen donated some supplies to the orphanage, so their situation will get better. If you're still worried, I can bring you two there to visit them someday. Archie's and Benny's eyes lit up in delight. Really? Can we really visit them? Roxanne smiled as she nodded. We need to bring many delicious food and toys for them, the boys enthused. Roxanne was pleased by how caring they were. It was getting late, so Roxanne chatted with the boys briefly before putting them to bed. After they fell asleep, she returned to her own room. Roxanne was physically and mentally exhausted after working hard the entire day. She washed up quickly and went to bed. The following day, Roxanne woke up and headed to the Research Institute. The staff knew that she had participated in the Damaris family's medical consultation yesterday, so they immediately came to her to ask her about it. Dr. Jarvis, how did the medical consultation go? Are the Damaris that skilled in medicine as the rumors claimed? A barrage of questions sounded in Roxanne's ears. Her lips curled up as she explained, the Damaris family's medical consultation isn't as mysterious as you think. Think of it as an ordinary medical consultation that normal hospitals offer. As for their medical skills, I don't have the right to comment on that. However, seeing how influential they are, they must be more capable than the usual doctors. Everyone had been too busy treating the children to notice whether the other doctors were equipped with exceptional skills. However, it was clear that they were excellent in some way, as they were able to gather so many reputable doctors. Besides, Roxanne was also impressed by the medical equipment invented by the Damaris family. Hearing that, everyone stopped asking about the Damaris family and instead quizzed her about the medical consultation. Roxanne remained patient and told them everything they wanted to know. Colby interrupted the crowd's questions and led Roxanne out of the research facility before things got out of hand. The Damaris family has plans to build a research institute, right? Did they say anything before you left? He questioned. Roxanne's brows knitted, for she wasn't sure of that. I don't know. They said nothing of the sort during the medical consultation yesterday, and I couldn't ask them outright, she told Colby truthfully. A deep line appeared between Colby's brows. Did they notice you? He asked anxiously. He knew why Roxanne decided to join the medical consultation. She wanted to establish connections with the Damaris family and exchange ideas regarding the medical industry. She also wanted to collaborate with the Damaris family to elevate their research institute to a higher position. Never mind if the Damaris family didn't mention the research institute. I wonder if Roxanne managed to befriend any of them. Roxanne appeared hesitant. I think so. But he only acknowledged my medical skills and said nothing else. After all, Jack hadn't even asked for her contact details before he left the venue. Thus, it was pretty hard for her to contact the Damaris family in the future. Holding that thought, Roxanne let out a sigh of regret. I'm afraid I won't get the opportunity to read the ancient medicine books that the Damaris family has. Colby fell silent for a moment before he patted her on the shoulder. Never mind. It's enough that they acknowledged your medical skills. There are many doctors in the country, but only a few manage to catch the Damaris family's attention. You're now one of them. Hearing his encouraging words, Roxanne chuckled gaily. You're right. I don't know if I've achieved my initial goal, but what we did yesterday was more meaningful than my goal. I nursed many kids back to health, so it doesn't matter even if the Damaris family didn't notice me. Admiration flashed across Colby's gaze. I'm glad you think that way. At noon, everyone in the Research Institute gathered for lunch to celebrate the success of the medical consultation yesterday. After lunch, Roxanne drove to the Queen residence. It was all thanks to Alfred that she got to participate in the medical consultation, so she had to offer her gratitude to him personally. The Queen family had also delivered some supplies last afternoon, so she also wanted to thank them on behalf of the kids at the orphanage. While she was at it, she needed to ask them what that was about too. On the way there, she gave Jonathan a call to inform him of her arrival. When she arrived at the Queen residence, Jonathan was already waiting in the living room. Seeing her, he got to his feet and gave her a welcoming smile. Dr. Jarvis, are you here to visit my grandpa? He's resting upstairs. Should I ask him to come down now? Roxanne chuckled and shook her head. I don't mind waiting. I need to talk to you too. Jonathan arched a brow in confusion. What is it about? After they sat on the couch, Roxanne parted her lips and said, last afternoon, Rex delivered a huge bunch of supplies to the orphanage. He told me you gave him the order, so I'd like to thank you on behalf of the children in the orphanage. Jonathan nodded and flashed a knowing smile. Yes, you should say thank you. But you shouldn't be thanking me. Roxanne was taken aback. Was it old Mr. Queen's order? That was the only possibility she could come up with. Jonathan shook his head. For a moment there, Roxanne was lost. It was Lucian's idea. Jonathan explained slowly. Lucian paid for the supplies. He also forked out his own money for the kids' treatment in Queen Hospital. All I did was send my men to carry out the job. If you want to thank the contributor, you should thank Lucian. Roxanne's frown deepened when she heard his explanation. I can't believe it was Lucian. Why did he do this? There is no need for Farwell Group to get closer to the Damaris family with their influence. Besides, Lucian used the Queen family name to get it done. Roxanne was puzzled. Seeing her bafflement, Jonathan chuckled. I don't know why he did that though. Perhaps you should ask him personally. Before she could reply, he got to his feet. I believe my grandpa's up. I'll go get him now. By the time Roxanne regained her composure, he was already going up the stairs. About a dozen thoughts crossed Roxanne's mind, and she was utterly confused. Naturally, she wasn't going to contact Lucian to find out why he did that. However, she couldn't figure out the reason for his actions. She was deep in thought when Jonathan appeared at the top of the stairs and helped Alfred down. Hearing their footsteps, Roxanne set her thoughts aside and rose to her feet to greet Alfred. How was the medical consultation yesterday? Asked Alfred. Roxanne answered him cheerfully, Thank you for giving me the chance to participate in the medical consultation, old Mr. Queen. It was really meaningful and I learned many things that aren't usually made available to me. Feeling pleased, Alfred bobbed his head. I knew this wouldn't be a fruitless experience for you as you're smart. What about the Damaris family? Did they comment on your skills? Jonathan chimed in, My grandpa put in a good word for you with old Mr. Damaris. Roxanne flashed a grateful smile. Mr. Damaris treated the doctors similarly, so I can't be sure what he thinks of me. However, what the Damaris family thinks of me isn't important to me anymore. I'm glad that I got the chance to participate in the medical consultation. They chatted briefly. As the sky was turning dark, Roxanne got up and bid goodbye to them. When she got home, Archie and Benny were already there. Lisa had also already prepared dinner. Roxanne and the boys had their meal together. After dinner, she played with them and waited until they fell asleep before going back to her room. As Roxanne lay in bed, she couldn't help but think about what Jonathan had told her that afternoon. It was Lucian who told Jonathan to deliver the supplies. Why did he do that? Jonathan even told me to ask him his motive personally. Roxanne had a feeling that Jonathan knew something. Why does it feel like there's a hidden meaning in his words? Conflicting emotions welled up in Roxanne when she came to that conclusion. As her mind wandered, she slowly fell asleep. Roxanne was awoken by the sound of her phone ringing early the following morning. When she looked at the caller ID, she realized it was from a number she did not recognize. Roxanne hadn't slept well last night and was woken up rudely by an unknown number, so she answered the call gruffly and demanded in a hoarse voice, "Who is this?" A few seconds later, the person on the other end of the line chuckled and replied, "It's me, Jack Damaris." "Did I wake you up, Dr. Jarvis?" Roxanne jerked awake and sat up in bed. Rubbing her eyes, she told him, "No. I'm usually awake at this hour, but I fell asleep later than usual last night." Jack laughed understandingly. "Mr. Damaris, how did you get my phone number?" Roxanne was still in a daze. "I remember Jack didn't get my contact details previously." Jack replied cheerfully, "I got your number from old Mr. Queen." "Sorry for the abrupt call, Dr. Jarvis." Roxanne quickly waved his concern away. "Oh, it's fine. Why did you call me this early though?" Jack glanced at the old man clad in a traditional outfit beside him. The old man gave him a curt nod. Jack parted his lips and revealed, "Well, I need to discuss something with you. I think we should meet up and talk in person though. Dr. Jarvis, are you free to have a chat?" A thought flashed past Roxanne's mind and she immediately brightened up. "Mr. Damaris, I can meet you anytime." "Will this afternoon do?" "I'll send you the location later," Jack suggested. Roxanne agreed to his suggestion at once. After the call ended, Roxanne felt nervous. Jack went through the trouble just to contact her, so the only possibility was that the Damaris family wanted to collaborate with their research institute. That was what she had hoped for all along. Now that her wish was going to come true, Roxanne grew increasingly anxious. "Hopefully, I don't mess up when we meet this afternoon." After breakfast, Roxanne called Colby. Colby was already at the research institute. He had changed his clothes and was about to head into the research facility when he received Roxanne's call. "Dr. Jarvis, what is it?" Roxanne explained, "I won't be going to the research institute today. The Damaris family just called me and asked to meet with me today, so please handle all the affairs at the research institute." The same thought popped up in Colby's mind too. He agreed readily, "Sure. Don't worry about the research institute and focus on your discussion with the Damaris family. Don't get stressed out." Roxanne agreed without hesitation. The meeting with the Damaris family was important, so Roxanne dressed up to show her sincerity. That afternoon, she arrived at the cafe earlier than the agreed time. Shortly after, she spotted Jack leading an elderly man into the cafe. The gray-haired man who resembled Jack was skinny and wearing a traditional outfit. It only took one look for her to guess how they were related to each other. Shocked, Roxanne got up hurriedly. She waited until they both came to a stop in front of her before giving the elderly man a polite bow. The man gave her a kind smile and observed her carefully. Roxanne had put on light makeup and tied her hair up to reveal her delicate features and swan-like neck. She looked beautiful and demure, dressed in a simple but elegant long dress. Sensing his gaze, Roxanne stood in her spot and allowed him to observe her as a smile played on her lips. A while later, the old man looked away and gestured at Jack. "Dr. Jarvis, sorry to keep you waiting." Jack helped the old man into a seat across from Roxanne, then introduced them to each other. This is my grandfather, the head of the Damaris family. You can call him. Call me old Mr. Damaris, Hector Damaris interjected cheerfully. He seemed kind and friendly, so Roxanne flashed a warm smile. Hello, old Mr. Damaris. Hector nodded genially and went straight to the topic. I asked you out today for a talk as Jack told me you did a great job at the medical consultation yesterday. Roxanne nodded obediently to indicate that she was listening. Jack told me that the acupuncture skills you used seemed old school and differed from everyone else's. Where did you learn them from? Hector gazed at her curiously. Roxanne wasn't about to lie to him, so she replied honestly, my mentor was interested in ancient medicine, so I was lucky enough to have read some related books in his house. After that, I worked hard and received some help from my mentor to develop the acupuncture treatment myself. Hector nodded thoughtfully as he shot Roxanne an approving look. Roxanne mentioned that her acupuncture skills were derived from ancient medicine books and that she received help from Harvey, but Hector had been in the industry long enough to know that one would only succeed if one worked hard enough. It was clear that Roxanne had worked hard to develop her own unique acupuncture skills. Before the medical consultation, old Mr. Queen would lavish praises on you whenever he contacted me. After the medical consultation ended, Jack came to me and told me you're a rare and talented doctor. Now that we finally got to meet in person, I realize they are telling the truth, Hector commented. Roxanne glanced at Jack subconsciously, for she had no idea he would mention her before Hector. Jack merely smiled in response. I love researching, that's all. There are many great traditional medicine doctors in the country, so I might not be as capable as them. Old Mr. Damaris, I don't deserve your praise. Hector waved his hand. You might not have that much experience, but I've been in this industry long enough, and my judgment is always accurate. You'll be the cream of the crop internationally one day. Roxanne was touched to hear that and thanked him gratefully. I do hope so, old Mr. Damaris. Hector responded with a joyful grin. After having some small talk, Hector cut to the chase and said, I heard from Alfred that you're interested in the Damaris family's plan to set up the research institute and thinking of collaborating with us, aren't you? Hearing that, Roxanne perked up in an instant. Wearing a look of solemnity, she stated earnestly, I've always been interested in traditional medicine. I'm more than happy to know that the Damaris family will set up a research institute specializing in this field. Not to mention, your family has been leading in the field all this while. Thus, I wish to grab this opportunity to collaborate with your family as I believe it'll boost my advancement in traditional medicine too. Hector scrutinized Roxanne for quite a while with a smile. Apparently, he was utterly pleased with her explanation. Roxanne put up a good front, but she could not help having her heart in her mouth. She knew that she should not let the chance slip away that round. Even though Hector was undoubtedly satisfied with her, she was still worried that things might go south. However, there was still no response from Hector after a while. Clenching her fists, Roxanne looked into his eyes with determination. Old Mr. Damaris, I hope you can give me a chance. I'll put in the effort and won't let you down. Only then did Hector nod gradually. Of course, I'll give you a chance. Buoyed up by his words, Roxanne was flushed with joy and at a loss as to what to do. She had to tighten the clench of her fists to get a grip on herself. You did well during the medical consultation, but I can't help feeling regretful. Hector switched the topic abruptly. There was a slight change in Roxanne's countenance, her heart skipped a beat. She could not wrap her head around his stance. Sensing her anxiousness, Hector flashed her a reassuring smile. Don't worry. Since I've mentioned that I'll give you a chance, I won't take back my words. I'm actually feeling regretful for not being able to see how well you displayed your skills with my own eyes. Anyway, I hope there'll be a chance for me to witness that during our collaboration in the near future." Roxanne heaved a sigh of relief and nodded agreeably. "Sure, old Mr. Damaris, thanks for giving me this chance. It's an honor to be able to collaborate with the Damaris family. I'll prove myself for sure." Hector began taking a fancy to her as time elapsed. Seeing how she swallowed her pride, he could not resist chuckling. "There's no need for formality. After all, I'm closely acquainted with Alfred. He keeps reminding me to give you more opportunities too. Just treat me as if I were him." Feeling a little awkward, Roxanne pursed her lips and smiled. Hector added casually, "I'd met your professor long ago. Even though he's been overseas throughout these years, he's contributed a lot to Chanaye with the medicine from his research. Now that I think about it, it's been quite a while since I last met him. I wonder how he's been doing lately." Roxanne could sense that Hector was trying to let her feel more relaxed. She smiled gratefully. "Professor Lambert has set up a research institute overseas. Apart from that, the one I'm currently working for was set up by him too. I bet he'll be overjoyed once he knows I have the opportunity to collaborate with the Damaris family." Hector nodded slightly. "Let's have a meal together when he's back." Roxanne agreed at once. "I'll convey your message to him." They chatted for the whole afternoon till it started to turn dark gradually. Feeling a bit tired, Hector returned to the topic. "Jack is in charge of the research institute. If anything arises in the future, you can liaise with each other directly." After exchanging contact numbers with Roxanne, Jack held onto Hector's arm and left with him. Alfred was well aware that Hector had met up with Roxanne earlier that day. After dinner that night, he gave Hector a call to have a grasp of their collaboration. Meanwhile, Jonathan was seated alongside him. After knowing that the Damaris family had agreed to collaborate with Roxanne, he notified Lucian without hesitation. In the meantime, Lucian had just put Estella to sleep when he received Jonathan's call. "Yes. Let me tell you some great news. The Damaris family has agreed to collaborate with Dr. Jarvis. Thus I suppose she'll not fly overseas temporarily," Jonathan responded with sheer blissfulness in his tone. Lucian arched his brows and nodded pleasantly. Well done." From the other end of the line, Jonathan's voice sounded again. "Even so, it implies that Dr. Jarvis will have to deal with the young heir from the Damaris family for a certain period after this." Lucian knitted his brows. "What do you mean?" Jack Damaris will be in charge of the Damaris family's research institute. You know him, don't you?" Jonathan replied with utter schadenfreude in his tone. Lucian's frown deepened into a scowl instantaneously. Undeniably, the Farwell family did not have expertise in the medical field. Nonetheless, he had run into the so-called young heir of the Damaris family several times. Jonathan added insult to injury by elucidating further, Mr. Damaris is the heir of the Damaris family. Not only that, his medical skills are the most outstanding among the young generation of the Damaris family. As for his looks, you had seen him in person before, right? He has quite a pleasant temperament too. I heard old Mr. Damaris was willing to collaborate with Dr. Jarvis partly because Mr. Damaris had helped pull some strings for her. So what? There was intense displeasure in Lucian's voice. Jonathan raised his brows. Dr. Jarvis and Mr. Damaris are not only single but also from the same profession. I'm convinced that they'll have a lot of common topics later. What's more, they are both outstanding. If they get to liaise with each other more, I'm afraid. Even though Jonathan did not finish his words, Lucian had a clear insight into his mind. Unequivocally, Roxanne and Jack matched each other perfectly well and might fall for each other in the long run. If so, Lucian's effort would go down the drain. At the thought of that, Lucian's expression darkened. He was frustrated enough with Larry by Roxanne's side. If Jack turned out to be another one who would stick to her, Lucian would not dare to imagine how he would react. After what seemed like an eternity, there was no response from Lucian. Therefore, Jonathan tried to enlighten him sincerely. Since I've made things clear, do you still intend to feign ignorance? I've put in a lot of effort so Dr. Jarvis can remain in Chanaye this round. If others become the ones to benefit from it, I won't be able to accept that even if you can bear with it. On the heels of that, there was another round of silence. When Jonathan was at a loss for words to advise Lucian, the latter eventually muttered, "I got it." Next, he hung up on Jonathan before the latter came to his senses. Catching sight of the phone screen darkening, Jonathan was bereft of speech. My goodness! How could he only respond nonchalantly after I've said so much? What does he mean by that? Jonathan had sensed Lucian's feelings toward Roxanne, and the woman was even Estella's biological mother. Since then, he had been giving his all to help Lucian with that. Nevertheless, he was speechless about the duo's current state after putting in so much effort. He was worried stiff when Lucian even quarreled with Roxanne. That was why he hinted at Lucian, hoping he would take prompt action. It never occurred to him that the latter would remain unperturbed. Consequently, Jonathan started having an awful headache. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.